Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. This is a series where I take your questions about the zombie storyline and I answer them. Whether big, small, or simple, I'm more than happy to take them on. You can either leave them down below or tweet me at JohnnyJ25 with your questions. Either way, you may be in the next episode. Today we are going to begin with a question from Aquashark, who asked, Johnny, could you answer this? 1. Where do the bows come from? And what do their names mean? The bows are interesting because we don't have that much backstory about them, but we can do a little bit of digging. We need to start with our base bow because when you pick up that plain bow, it's called the Wrath of the Ancients. And who are the Ancients? That's probably the first thing we really need to dig into. The only time the Ancients have ever been mentioned in a zombie storyline prior to DE was Origins. Samantha would talk about the staves of the Ancients, and she used to talk about how the Ancients had left clues for us. So if there are the staves of the Ancients and Primus are the ones who wield the staves, then Primus might be the Ancients. Now, in addition to that, there have been references to the Ancient Order of the Keepers, and the Keepers, of course, work with Primus, so maybe Ancients also refers to Keepers, and maybe when it says the Wrath of the Ancients, it means the Wrath of the Keepers. The thing is, we've never actually seen Primus wield the bows in the past. We've seen Primus wield the bows on DE, but we've yet to actually see any original documents showing that Primus wielded the bows in battle. Like, we have an image of Primus wielding the staves in battle, but never the bows. So this is where it's difficult to definitively say that the bows had belonged to Primus. Now, it makes sense that they belong to Primus because they do seem to be associated with the Ancients and the Keepers, and there are 4 of them. So this is not something confirmed, this is just something we theorize, that the bows actually belong to Primus, and if not Primus, then other Keepers, members of the Ancient Order of the Keepers, hence the name, the Wrath of the Ancients. Now, what about the upgraded bows? Because when you upgrade them, you get these ridiculous names, and this is part of the root of Aquashark's question. What do these names even mean? For example, we have the Storm Bow, which his name is Krimalama La Aman Man, which I probably really butchered, but it's just hard to say. Or say the Void Bow, which is Krieg Gak Kalit Lu Gastatan An. Or the Krino Am Nal An Ko Korak, which is the Fire Bow. And finally, the Kri Holo Lu Cream Salit, which is supposedly the Wolf Bow. I mean, what the hell do these names even mean? Where do they come from? When we played Origins, we had our 4 staves, and the staves had these names that didn't seem normal, but once you did a little bit of investigation, actually made sense, and they all referenced different gods from different mythology. And you look at the bows names and they're like, well, maybe this is in another language. And then you can start digging around maybe on Google Translate and looking at various languages, and you'll find that none of these match up to any other language. But then you gotta realize that there are actually 2 in-game languages. There's Keeper and Apothicon, and we learned about these midway through the life of Black Ops 3. And these names are actually in Keeper, the language of the Keepers, which is actually why, or another reason, to link these bows with the Keepers. So for example, the Storm Bow, when translated, and you can use Mr. Waffle's tool that he had created to help translate the bows, a link is in the description. This is how I was able to do it myself if you'd like to see it for yourself, is actually the energy volatile, and this is what it looks like in Keeper. Now remember, Keeper is read from right to left rather than left to right, as you might be used to it. The Void Bow is called the Decay Portal, the Fire Bow is called the Fall Banish, and then the Wolf Bow is called the Keeper's Servant. So that's what the names come from, and when you think about it, it kind of works a little bit. So you have the energy volatile, which is the Storm Bow, and it really is just a lot of volatile energy. That might be what you can consider a storm and all the lightning flying about. The Decay Portal also works because what you have is kind of this void, and the void skulls kind of eat away at stuff almost as if it's decaying, and they kind of come from portals, and like sort of, it makes sense kind of. The Fall Banish is the weird one. I'm not really sure what they were going for with Fall Banish. And finally, Keeper's Servant. And you gotta think that the wolf is kind of the servant to the king. He follows him, he's by his side at all times, and the king is a member of the Ancient Order of the Keepers. So that's what's going on there. When the wolf is by your side, he is your servant in battle, hence where the name comes from. That's what's going on with the bows and their names and where they come from. They belong to the Keepers. The Keepers had used them in battle. Most likely they were used by Primus, however it's not confirmed, and those are what the names mean and what they look like in Keeper. The next question we'll be taking on comes from Dankiest Memes, who asks, if Moon is supposed to take place in 2025, why in the Chronicles map pack are there Nazi Iron Cross banners littered across Griffin Station? So when you play the original Moon, there really isn't much going on in terms of detail. The map's pretty bland. And then you play Zombie Chronicles Moon and you'll notice that there are decorations and kind of Nazi imagery everywhere, specifically the Iron Cross. It's all over the map. What's going on there? Is the original Moon not a Nazi moon? And then is the Zombie Chronicles 1 actually taken over by the Nazis? And why are there Nazis in 2025? Well, let me explain. We know for a fact that Moon does take place in 2025. It clearly states it on the Zombies timeline. There is no arguing around that. This is canon. However, Moon was not built in 2025. The map just happens to take place in 2025. We learn that construction on Griffin Station actually began January 23rd, 1940. This is when Richtofen returns from his journey or his disappearance. He and Dr. Schuster begin to start planning up Griffin Station, and shortly after, they begin construction on it. Now, Moon doesn't end up taking place until about 85 years later. So that's what's going on there. That's why we can be in the future and all that stuff is still there from 1940. All the fallout happens around 1945, and shortly after that, the facility is basically just abandoned. Nobody uses it, and the zombies just eventually take over, and that's why so far into the future, you can have all that stuff there. Now, what about all the different banners? Why is it that suddenly one version of it is filled with Nazi stuff and the other is not? And I think it's just a matter of Treyarch trying to go back and add detail. I wouldn't look at it too much in terms of story. We'd kind of suspected that because all the Nazi stuff was gone, that maybe when the Americans went to the moon in 1963, that they had kind of taken it over and fixed it up and made it their own, but that doesn't seem to be the case because the Zombie Chronicles 1 is actually still very decked out in Nazi gear. So it appears as though the Americans never actually do take over Griffin Station, and the canon version of Moon is the one that has all these different decorations on it. And you just have to imagine that even though the original Moon, the one from Black Ops 1, doesn't have Iron Crosses hanging about, that it still is that Group 935 Nazi base. That's what's going on there. It just doesn't have as many decorations. Today's episode will end with a question from Anthony Hernandez, who asks, why did they need Dempsey to go to the moon? And you're awesome. Thanks, man. So this is a weird one because it doesn't quite fit in with our understanding of the zombie storyline. It doesn't make sense, but it can work, and what we first need to do is address how the original universe works. We learn on October 14th, 1945, Richtofen returns to Deriz and awakens Dempsey, Takio, and Nikolai with no recollection of who they are and who Richtofen is. They agree to help him. The four would become known as Ultimus. In the original universe, following the fallout at Deriz and Moon, Richtofen is able to wake up Ultimus and the rest of the crew. They are asleep at Deriz, so Tank Dempsey is never taken to the moon, Nikolai is not at Stalingrad, and Takio is not with Division 9, becoming a test experiment. So that is something that is going on right there, but not in our original universe. They are still at Deriz. So why in one universe are they at Deriz, and in another universe, based on that previous universe, is Tank Dempsey being taken to the moon? Well, part of this I think is because the fallout happens sooner. Richtofen ends up getting shot at the Giant, and I think you start to see a little bit of an internal collapse within Group 935. They realize something happened to Richtofen, things are starting to fall out of control, then maybe Dr. Groff orders for the test subjects to be scattered. They take Tank Dempsey to the moon, maybe give Takio to Division 9, and then we also see Nikolai go off somewhere, ends up becoming awoken, and then helps fight in the Battle of Stalingrad. That's the only way to really explain why the test subjects are scattered and awoken in different places. Tank Dempsey, though, is never quite awoken. He's sent to Deriz and then is launched off onto the rocket. Now eventually our crew is able to shoot him down and then kill him to collect his soul. But what did they want with Dempsey at the moon? Because Dempsey never goes to the moon in the original universe. We might be able to find a clue in one of Dr. Groff's quotes.
Yeah, Doctor. The machine is ready and awaiting the conduit.
Dr. Groff mentions that the machine is awaiting the conduit. Now this is a very vague sentence because who the hell is the conduit? We can only assume Dempsey because Dempsey's on his way to the moon. And what is this machine? What were they trying to do with Dempsey? That's also something we don't quite know. Maybe the MPD, maybe they wanted to use Dempsey for the MPD, maybe they wanted to kill him and then use his soul to activate the machine, or maybe they wanted him to touch the machine or enter the machine. That doesn't really make sense, but they could have been trying to do something with him. It doesn't really make sense what this machine is because of how vague and undescript they are. It could be any machine for all we know. It just appears as though, because of the fallout at Deriz, they felt it was unsafe to leave the test subjects there. As a result, they had Dempsey moved to Griffin Castle, where they then flew him up to Griffin Station. And at Griffin Station, there was a machine awaiting him that they would use him for with this machine. What that machine is, unfortunately, we don't know, and we'll never know because the moon was blown up. That's going to wrap things up for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A and found it interesting. If you did, maybe give it a like, possibly subscribe for more. I'm always covering the zombie storyline, so if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next one. Have a great day, and bye.